All right, well, this is my first time back in 3 weeks. There's so much stuff, it's hard to know which way to go. I keep finding little pictures of my neighbors. I think Ann's granddaughter. So this was this little short street, dead end into a little adorable circle called Georgia Place with beautiful oak trees and about 20 little houses. We lived in the first one on the right in the circle. Now we're just kind of walking from behind, trying to get to it. I think maybe this is my slab. I can't really tell. That was our street. And we had a back deck. Our house, our whole backyard was a deck, and I can't even find that. Let's see. I know I had a fire hydrant in my yard, a red fire hydrant. And our driveway was between two trees. I don't even know. There's that power pole. And then our fence was all the way around. And then our house was right there. Our driveway was next to those two trees. So that's our house right there. Wow, and this brick house right there, when we jumped out of our second story, we were gonna swim this way toward that brick house, Mona's house. And then once my husband said, go with the water, and then once we got onto safety over there, we looked and this house was just vanished, the brick house. And that's about a 40-year-old house. All these houses on the street are much older. My slab is not this one. This was our next door neighbor, Patty and Dennis. Our slab is under all that. Can't even find it. Wow. So there were adorable little houses, every slab here, pink and blue and yellow, and we were all friends. This is how I know it's my house. That red fire hydrant. We had tons of trees too, and bushes and flowers all along here. So this was my driveway, so my house was right there to the left. Well, Sunday was the day before the storm, and we were working so hard at the TV station, telling everyone, we were on the air like both days. I worked all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then I came home Sunday night, and a lot of people were going to sleep at the station and be there for the morning. And I just wanted to sleep at home for a few hours and then get up early and then come in. And by the time we woke up, the pine tree that we ended up crawling over, but it's down there now, pine tree fell and it was blocking the road, and there's a fence right there. So we were thinking, well, maybe our cars can drive over, past the fence. And then we started packing up, got the dog and cat, and then the water started coming into the carpet. And then the water started getting really high, and then we saw it like halfway up our cars. And then a jet ski from our neighbor came and hit my little brand new Toyota, and they kind of floated away. And then my husband yells, get upstairs, because the water just started, to rise pretty quickly. And I'm just standing, all these houses were little lofts. So I'm looking over the loft, holding my cat and the dog, and I'm seeing my grandmother's cedar chest smashing, my TV, all the plates smashing, everything, my crucifix off the wall falling, everything breaking. And then I called the TV station and just told them our address for y'all to tell the sheriff where we could be found. And then the roof, one side of it, the back side, started like flapping, and then it just, the roof went off. And then my husband yelled, get off the phone, we gotta go. And then we jumped out the back window. Luckily we have like a little roof over our sunroom, so our hot tub bobbed up. And so my husband said, we're gonna jump in that. It has insulation. It wasn't perfect, but it was kind of on its side bobbing, and we saw the insulation, we saw that it was floating. So he threw my cat, threw my dog, I stepped in the roof, jumped, I grabbed my dog, my cat totally disappeared. And then I kept saying, then I guess my husband jumped. I didn't see him because I was looking for my animals. And he came up, he had slipped under the top of the house that was moving off. So if I hadn't jumped at that exact second, I'm not as athletic, or I'm spastic. I wouldn't have been able, I don't think I'd be able to have made it without that. Then everything was floating around. Then I stepped in the roof, jumped into the hot tub. Stuff was floating all around us. My husband's leg got caught in a bush and he pulled up. I still have lumps. The bruises are gone, but I still have like the lumps on my legs, where at the time I was kicking so hard with stuff everywhere, but it didn't hurt. It's weird, you know, with adrenaline or whatever. It didn't hurt. I was just kicking as hard as I could. I had tennis shoes, sweatpants, a little t-shirt, and a raincoat. That's all I had. And we put our 2 licenses in his zipped pocket of my husband's raincoat in case, you know, we died or they found us. And then we thought about almost jumping to our neighbor's house. Thank God we didn't. That was obliterated, we think, our other neighbor said, by a tornado. But we decided to go with the water. Well, the hot tub was kind of moving that way. And after just about a minute, it started to kind of, you know, fill up with water and started to kind of go under. And then miraculously, a piece of plyboard with some type of sprayed insulation, that yellow foam, just floated right into the front, right in front of us, I guess right about here in the middle of the street. And then I just put my dog on that, and Ben made me promise to let Casey go if, you know, it got to a point where my life was in danger. But my muscles in my left arm hurt from holding her so hard. And I pushed her on the board, then he pushed me on the board, then I pulled him on the board, and then we just floated that way. And we just kind of went with the water. And under our old neighbor's house, we know he built it like 50 years ago, because he always talked about it. So we made it to his Lincoln Continental, like by just crawling on debris, and then sat in his Lincoln Continental for a while. And as we sat under his carport, his car was like slightly floating, and that same pine tree that blocked us from leaving that morning turned and was blocking the car under the carport, keeping us from floating away because the water was so high. And then we were sitting over there looking this way, and it was like remember when you're little in the wave pool, the big wave, like here it comes, not smashing waves, just slow and big, like whoosh. And then the car would move, and then we were like, okay, it's all right. We were holding on, and my dog was shaking, and we were hugging like this on the top of his car with our legs around each other. It was so loud, we were screaming just to hear each other, and we were this far apart. That's how loud it was. And then just the waves kept coming, and the water was high, and then we thought, if the car goes up to the top of the carport, because it had a steel beam, if it goes up to the top, we were just gonna, there's a hurricane fence back that way, and we knew the railroad tracks were that way, so our plan, if the water got too high to where we'd be like crushed up, we were gonna, you know, go on the trees. But luckily, we just sat on the car for about maybe 3 hours, and the water kept rising. But then after a while, and then I was praying a lot and singing, singing out loud, and then thinking about my dad and praying to him and talking to him. And then we started counting the bricks on the wall. There was like a little notch where Mr. Whitey had like a little shelf, you know, those little slats, and I could only count from the window 10 slats. And within the 3 hours, I started counting more and more, finally got to 37. And then we could finally start to see maybe the pavement. So for a while, the water was, I don't even know how high. The water starts to go down, and my husband knew that Mr. Whitey didn't leave, and I know he's elderly because his car was there. So he starts yelling, you know, Mr. Whitey, Mr. Whitey, and then he says, I'm gonna go in. And I was like, no, don't go, don't leave me. And he did anyway. He like crawled through his carport on a little utility room inside, and then he told me, come, you know, and then I gave him my dog, and then I climbed up into the carport, and then we get into his house. His front door had blown in. That big massive pine tree was in his yard, keeping us, thankfully, blocked in. He was sitting on the top of his couch, just in boxers, with mud and dirt, and the front door still, rain blowing in, smoking a cigarette. And he was calm as can be. Then after about another 4 hours, when the wind started to die down, and we were completely, another weird thing, you wouldn't believe, I can't even explain the leaves. We were completely head to toe in my underwear, in my bra, everywhere, tiny little specks of shredded leaves that were like glue, like we were scratching them off. And we stayed in there for about 4 hours. He had no water. He had like this, like an immigrant worker that was kind of staying with him. All they had was cigarettes and old coffee. And we left so early in the morning when we jumped that we didn't have any food. Like my stomach was starting to growl. It was like about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening by now. And then my husband said, you know, things had kind of calmed down enough. It was just like a rain, just like a little windy storm. He crawled out of the front door, and we looked out of the window, and there was so much debris. It felt like Armageddon. It really felt like there was no way out, and we were going to be stuck there for days. And then my husband climbed across this massive pine tree that was like this across his house, crawled across the pine tree to the house next door. They had steel beam like doors and everything. They were at the top of their window yelling, "Here we are, come here." So then my husband came back and said, "We can go to Don and Mary's." Then we all three walked across the pine tree, and we later found out that one of our neighbors was found dead right where we were crawling over to get to Don and Mary's. We get into Don and Mary's. They were great. I mean, they were very prepared. They had they had WLOX on their little TV, their black and white TV. And then that's the first time I really cried, because she gave me dry clothes and hugged me, and then I started crying. I stood in her tub, ice cold water, because she had filled her tub to flush the toilet, and just stood there and tried to rub off all the leaves in the dark. And then we got into her house, and then about an hour later, some brave firefighters started walking along all the rubble, holding the gutters to balance themselves, yelling, "Is anyone in here? Is anyone in here?" And then Don, the husband, poked his head out and said, "You know, this is who we are, and Rebecca Powers is here. Please tell WLOX she's alive," because all of y'all thought I was dead, because I called that morning. And so then they radioed that we were there, and within about another hour, our general manager and news director came in a truck and got us out. So this is my little street. These three houses are still standing, amazingly, but I know they had water everywhere. So we just kind of, on the wood, I guess, floated this way, because the beach is that way, so the water was all coming north. And we were floating. At one point, my husband even kicked the top of our house away, the thing that he had gone under. He kicked that away, and there it is. You could see this half where the roof had ripped off. That's my shower, my upstairs shower. And the hook that I kept my shampoo on is still hanging on the nozzle. There's the top of my house. Then we ended up, I guess, coming this way. And of course, this street has been cleared now, but it was just, we were just kind of among all of this debris. That's the carport that we ended up getting to. And look, a tree had fallen on it, but thank God it stayed up. Mr. Whitey built that himself. That's the little door that my husband finally climbed over the debris to get into Mr. Whitey's house to see if he was alive. And thankfully he was. We told him when he was smoking cigarettes that there was natural gas that we smelled through the air, because I guess tornadoes or whatever had ripped up a lot of these brick houses. And we said, "Mr. Whitey, maybe you shouldn't be smoking because we smell natural gas." And he said, have you ever seen a kamikaze? I was in Pearl Harbor. So he kind of made us realize that we don't need to be scared anymore. So I'm standing on the big giant pine tree that first blocked our road and then ended up saving us because it kept the car from floating away that we ended up on. The car was more forward with the water, and that's the little carport that we ended up climbing through to get into Mr. Whitey's house. It had stuff much higher with all the water. The little shelves to the left is where we counted the slats to see how high the water was. It's about as high as that top shelf, I guess, the water. We counted the little tiny slats where you can move the shelves, you know, and at first we could only count 10. Then when it got to about 37, the water started going down after a few hours. I didn't realize the tree was on top of this carport. Thank God it never fell in. Because our plan was if it got above this and we would get trapped, we would just try to swim that way and grab the hurricane fence behind it. Since it's named hurricane fence, I figured, you know, I guess that's what, but luckily we didn't have to do that. Amazingly, our hot tub ended up exactly where we ended up, but we didn't take it all the way, you know? That's what's so weird. We were on debris and stuff, so it's just crazy that it ended up right there. That's the window we jumped out of. And how did the top of the house end up over here too? Yeah, this is about half a football field away from where our house was to where it ended up. And like I said, it's just crazy that the hot tub ended up right below the window where we jumped, because we bailed out of that within just about a minute. There is my back door with see that? That looks like our back door with the, you know, going into the Florida room. So this is the big, crazy pine tree. Oh. Ah! There's my Scion. Oh, the door's open. Wow, there's my Toyota Scion that I just bought a year ago, got for my birthday. And almost to the day of my birthday, now it's dead. I didn't know where it went. We still can't find the Jeep. Wow, there's our little car. See the scratches from my dog. My husband and I were just like hugging and had Casey between us, and she kept slipping. We were all soaking wet. And it was really actually more up here, and the water was probably about to here at first. And we didn't know if it was going to keep rising, then we would have been trapped under this thing. So that's why we had the plan to try to go north to that hurricane fence if we had to. And then I just kept praying and counting these slats. At first, I could only count 10, 1, 2, from this way. To, and then it went to here, then it went to here, then I could start to count 32 slats, and that's when we knew the water was going down. There was a tiny little baby squirrel shaking on one of these branches. We kind of stared at it. It was just right there. Stared at it forever. It had his little tail wrapped around his body, shaking. And then once the water kind of went down, I actually stepped on this thing because we saw the power cords. We didn't know if there was still electricity or not. So my husband went first. I stepped on this, and then he handed me the dog. And then we climbed up into Mr. Whitey's house, which you can see all, the pine trees and debris, and it was already like that. The water line on his white door, you can see how high it was in there. That was on our upstairs bed. Top of our fireplace. Wow. So this is my upstairs. Used to be upstairs. We didn't jump out of this window. We jumped out of that one, but see some pictures that were in this nightstand. All ruined, wet. Negatives are wet too. Wow, so crazy. Where the roof ripped off is you just see. Ah! There's that pine tree again. That pine tree first blocked us in and then ended up saving us. Here's my grandmother's antique mirror. That was on the, oh wow, it's still together. Does that mean good luck? It's not broken. Yay. It's just truly unbelievable. And the oak trees were so beautiful, and seeing helicopters go over our sweet little neighborhood it's just, I can't even explain it. It's like when you're at a friend's house and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go home. Or, oh, I need to remember to take that out of the freezer. Like I still, even though we're staying with a friend, I still think, it's just weird. Like, I know it's just stuff, but it's like all your pictures and wedding dress, and it's just weird. And I used to love, we were so happy here. And, all of our neighbors that we'll never live with again, and it's just sad. I know we'll all do okay, and I just feel bad about my cat that I loved. But at least my dog made it, and my husband could have died. I mean, he slipped under the house, and the fact that he's alive should, you just have to think about the good stuff. God. I mean, how could my cat have survived? There's no way. Oh, poor kitty.